the middle of the off-season workouts, we'll share what we call 3 H's. And we'll give every athlete the opportunity to stand up in front of the group and be able to talk about, who their hero is in their life, to talk about a hardship that they've overcome. And we give them all the opportunity to talk about what a highlight is, what was one of their big highlights. And it's amazing what you learn about people. In the model behavior, we're going to share first.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I always tell the coaches is, I'm like, you better be real when you go up there because they can see through it.
Yeah.
So don't go up there and give me something that I can read. Go in front of this team and give them something that the players are going to say, man, I had no idea coach was struggling with that.
Welcome to the Captains and Coaches podcast. We explore the art and science of leadership through the lens of athletics and beyond. I'm your host, Tex McQuilkin, and today's conversation takes us to Terpsville as we visit the University of Maryland's beautiful football training facility, where Director of Football Strength and Conditioning, Coach Ryan Davis, is redefining what it means to develop a confident and competent student athlete. He'll share how his 3 H's framework prepares athletes for life beyond sports and brings them together as a team, and how he's adapting his leadership style in the NIL era. Get ready for an episode packed with practical wisdom on building trust, fostering accountability, and creating a culture where every athlete can thrive. With that, let's hand it off to Coach Ryan Davis. Ready, and break. I am in College Park, Maryland, sitting down with Coach Ryan Davis. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Welcome to Terpsville.
I love it. This is my first time in the weight training facility, but I've attended many of football games, many of Maryland Duke basketball back in ACC days.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, my grandfather went here, so I have an affinity for the program, and yeah, this place is immaculate.
Yeah, we are extremely fortunate to be in the facility that we're in, and if your grandfather went here, he was probably watching basketball games in what is now our indoor facility for football.
Oh, wow.
So the old Cole Arena is actually our indoor facility now. So a lot of history in this place.
Yeah, I used to hear stories of the Bird Stadium also was the lacrosse barn dorms.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we got to walk by that later.
Love it.
We're going to start with a little spelling bee.
Okay.
How do you spell love?
I was taught by Pat Sullivan that is spelled Time when it comes to athletes.
So walk us through that a little bit. You have a special thing going on. We've had some conversations before this, man, and I appreciate your philosophy. But now let's start to lay it out for our audience here.
My first head job, I worked at Sanford University down in Birmingham, Alabama, and I worked for a guy by the name of Pat Sullivan. Literally one of the greatest human beings that I've ever been around. Taught me so much as a coach, taught me so much as a person. But he always said to me when I got the job, he said, if you make every decision about your student athletes, if you make it about the athletes, you'll always kind of keep yourself out of hot water. The second thing he said is if you invest the right amount of time and energy into them and you have the right relationships with you, it's always going to help your career. Mm-hmm. And so Pat used to tell us that, love can only be spelled with time. The only way that you can get there to develop the relationship with the athlete is to invest time in that athlete. And it's not just time in the weight room. It's not just time on the field. So since then, I've tried to be very intentional with my staff. I've tried to be very intentional with our athletes about not only the time that we're investing, but how we're investing that time. There's things that I love to do. There are things that all these guys love to do. And when you've got a staff, you try to kind of meet in the middle somewhere and figure out, where can we go and kind of take the walls down, be a little bit vulnerable, and be able to spend that time with each other.
New coaches coming in, I imagine you have interns. How do you start to teach that? Because a new coach, they are obsessed with programming. They think it's all about what's on the paper, the card that they're handing the athletes. So how do you introduce this value and connection and getting to know the kid?
So one of the things that we'll do is we'll ask, like an intern, for example, they always want to know about programming, like you said. And the question that I'll have for them is, how are you going to get the best player on our team to work the hardest? They can never answer it.
No, that's a tough question.
Well, it's like, Coach, the only way that you can get there is by learning about that player, spending time with the player, getting to the point where they're going to tell you and you're going to get to learn about them, but really you're going to learn what makes them tick You're going to learn what the motivating factors are, what the inspiring factors are. You're going to learn why they're doing it. You're going to learn how they got here. You're going to learn things about them where, this is why they don't want to let such and such down. And when you start to invest the time and you start to learn those things, you start to realize that the programming is very important. What you do from a program standpoint is extremely important, but it's not the most important thing when it comes to training these guys or really training anybody for that matter, because they're not going to work harder because of the letters behind your name. They're going to work hard because they trust that you have their best interests in mind. And that's when the programming becomes particularly important. And so when we have new staff, when we have interns, whatever it is, we kind of walk them through that process, and they really start to see it. They start to live out that process when you get in the meat of the off season, you get in the meat of summer training. They really start to understand the value of that process and what we're trying to get accomplished.
And I've heard you speak about the in-betweener and calling yourself an in-betweener. So speak to us about what that means for an athlete, but also the opportunity for a younger coach to step in and have impact. Maybe they're not writing the program.
Yeah, so there's a few ways that I kind of describe this. So we are kind of the filter system as strength coaches between maybe the position coach, maybe the head coach, because we have no vested interest in who goes and plays on the field. So because of that, we don't control playing time. We want to be able to see everybody at their best. All right. And the other part of that, there's two phases of this. The in-between also is, from a philosophical standpoint, I would consider myself that, because we lean on sports science, but we don't let sports science drive the program. So we still have to look at what we're coaching. We still have to see what we're coaching. We still have to be able to develop relationships. And in that aspect, I'll give you this. I had someone from Catapult say this to me. They said, Coach, if the athlete puts a Catapult unit on and one of them goes over there and does 15 up downs and the other one goes and runs a 110, the Catapult's job is to measure mechanical stress. It's going to log the work similarly. The eyes are what give it context. So you have to be able to see what the athlete is doing to give the data context. You got to know how you're going to practice. You got to know how you're preparing these guys. So from that sense, when you look at those two things, I think those are part of what make the strength coach position so valuable nowadays, because of those things.
For the athlete as an in-betweener, they may not feel they're putting in the work, but they're not getting the playing time. That may be the only thing that they're cashing in on as a reward. So how do you then encourage them to continue to put in the effort as an in-betweener?
We want to coach. It's not just the physical aspect of that, but we want to coach the mental aspect too. What are the things that you can control? All right. Playing time's really not one of them. So the things that you can control, you talk to the athlete and it's like, look, if we improve these things, so my attitude, my effort, my approach, my work ethic, if I can improve all these things, most of the time the athlete's going to agree that it gives us a better version of them, right? If we get a better version of you, we've got a better chance at increasing that playing time. And so we're not just trying to coach the athlete to be the best out on the field. We're really trying to coach them to be the best version of who they can be, so that whatever it is they're doing, it gives them a better chance at success.
I like that. So the playing time is rewarding, but it's not the reward.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So then speak to us also within the in-betweeners on opportunities for them to lead. So they may not have the C on their chest. They may not be breaking down the huddles. So what are other opportunities for those individuals to lead?
Well, also, this is another thing that I learned from Pat Sullivan. Leadership is influence, right? And we don't get to choose influence. So he would tell me all the time, he'd say, as a head strength coach, you have a lot of people that watch you. You have a lot of people that put eyes on you. And it's not all the time that God gives us the ability to see the people that we're influencing, whether it be positive or whether it be negative. Somebody's paying attention to you that you don't know. You may open doors for somebody that you don't know. And the crazy thing is, at this point in my career, I've had people reach out to me that are like, man, I've been following you since whenever, and you don't even realize that I've tried to model my career after you. So when it comes to the athlete, we don't get to choose influence. Coach Locks did this drill a couple years ago. We went into the meeting room and we did this like Google survey. And what he said was one of the questions on the Google survey was, who inspires you the most by the way they work? And the answer not only surprised us, but it surprised the athlete that the guys chose. And it was crazy how many people voted for this guy on our team because he shows up every day. He's the first one in the building. He goes up, he breaks down film, he goes out, works on the sled. He's doing all this before he ever comes in to train.
Mm-hmm.
Eating is like an event to him. So when he fuels his body, it's like the guys kind of pick on him sometimes because they're like, man, this is a full-on event when you get to go to the dining hall. But that's his attitude and mindset of how he approaches the way he fuels his body, the way he trains, the way he does the extra work. So I remember when we did that and he won that vote, he was so surprised because he looked at me and said, I didn't know anybody was paying attention. Athletes pay attention to a lot.
Yeah.
They're very resilient and they pay attention to a lot. So when it comes to that whole leadership as influence, we don't get to choose our influence. So we're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. All right. And you never know who's watching you or who has eyes on you or how you're affecting that person's life.
So that was all public. Everybody got to see.
Everybody got to see it. And I think back to what Coach Sullivan used to say. We oftentimes, God doesn't give us the ability to see who we're influencing. And I thought, how cool is it now that we did this activity and the way Coach Locke set this up, the athlete actually got to see that, man, I'm having a positive impact on a lot of people around me.
Yeah. Now I feel that would encourage him to now be more of a vocal leader because it reinforced the confidence of the actions that he was taking.
Absolutely. 100%.
Time out. What if I told you the path to transformation isn't about rigid schedules and crushing yourself daily in the gym? It's about moving with purpose and intention. At Captains and Coaches, we understand that true leadership starts with embodiment. When you look the part, you lead the part. But here's what makes our training programs different. The Old Bull training program adapts to your life, not the other way around. Choose your own adventure, daily workouts less than 60 minutes a day with rep schemes that flex depending on your energy and feel, because we know sustainable growth happens when you become a self-leader and stop missing workouts. This creates a powerful ripple effect. To change how you move, you transform your mental emotional state, transform your emotions, and you elevate your decisions. Better decisions, that's when your entire quality of life shifts. Join the Old Bull movement. Let's build more than a stronger body. Let's create a purposeful, powerful life on your terms. Click the link in the show notes for a 7-day free trial of the Old Bull program and get started today. And now, back to the show. Ready, and ready.
In your career, have you seen players step into that more vocal role? So they did everything right in their actions, but then where have you stepped in as a mentor to help them find their voice and lead by not only example, but now with their word?
Yeah, so I think that first part you're talking about is modeling behavior, right? That's what people call leading by example. I think that's a big part of being able to build that confidence to go out and then be a little bit more vocal when you're able to consistently model the right types of behaviors. The second piece of that is you start to really create a framework for the athlete of shedding light on how they're positively impacting people around them and how they're positively impacting others. I was just in a meeting this morning, and in the meeting we were talking about force multipliers. You get a guy that does the right thing, like this athlete that we're talking about. When that guy becomes vocal, he becomes a force multiplier. So if he's around a bunch of people who, you know, this guy's a 7, well, all of a sudden that guy becomes a 14 because he's around him and he's a force multiplier. He breeds confidence to other people. And then you start to learn about the power of presence. You know, so when our head football coach walks in a room, there's a presence to him. Yeah. And there's a respect that comes with that presence. All right. But it's no different than the guy who's doing the right thing all the time that people pay attention to, who may not speak all the time. All of a sudden, you're in a time of chaos or turmoil and that guy speaks up, there's a presence to him when he talks because of the work that he's been able to do and how people have been able to see the fruits of his labor. You start to shed light on those things, and I think that's how you start to cultivate and develop leadership from some of these guys within the program.
Let's take the reverse angle. So speak to us about the very vocal individuals. They're this is the wrong word for it, but they're very loud. We can hear them in the weight room. We can hear them training, but sometimes when the going gets tough, then they get down on themselves, and we're no longer hearing them. So how do you aim to spot that behavior in this training environment that we can control to help prepare them to not only with their word match now with their actions?
So those are the conversations that you're having about, look, I don't need to hear you. I need to see you. We need to be able to focus on keeping our head down and being able to continually improve in whatever it is that we're doing rather than hearing this. And those are honest conversations. But this goes back to that first principle we talked about when it comes to relationships. That's a hard conversation to have with somebody if they don't trust you.
Yeah.
And so if it's not me, maybe it's somebody else on my staff that has that person that's got a great relationship with that person that's going, hey, man, listen, we don't need to hear you all the time. I need to be able to see you work and see you progress before I hear this. And you have those conversations all the time. And some of that, if they still don't see it, then some of it becomes, now I'm going to engineer a situation where you're going to understand why I don't need to hear you and why you have to continue to work because maybe you're not there yet. And so it's teaching and learning. And it's us paying attention to the room to see when we have to have those situations, when we got to engineer those situations, and when we don't.
That's why I love the strength side of sports performance, because it's the opportunity to control the controllables. We engineer these situations to then test how they'll react or act in certain stresses, and then we model, then we shape the behaviors that we need them to display in competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Man, so you said it here, trust, and I've heard you quote, transparency builds trust. So, I mean, in the world of Division I football, there's a lot of ethos, a lot of ego step in. I want to protect my ego. So now speak to us about your opportunity to now break down that so we can build these people not just for the confidence on the field, but also being amazing human beings once they move on from football, because everyone's career ends.
Everybody's does. And I think, I refer to that meeting this morning, but the nature of this, I heard Coach Saban discuss this on ESPN or Sports Center or something, but he was saying that the nature of athletics nowadays is almost rewarding self-indulgent behavior. And so you've got to understand that before some of these guys come in and how that would affect your culture and how you need to be able to build. The first part is kind of recognizing it, right? And so then you hear me talk about transparency a lot, but I think the other part of transparency is vulnerability. You can't build trust with people if you're not vulnerable with people. If they don't feel like they're getting to know the real you, it becomes really difficult to be able to build that trust. So now the challenge becomes, how do we understand the nature of the landscape that we're in? How do we build a culture of trust between these guys and really be able to get a group to stay mission-centered that's all pulling in the same direction? And I think that presents some unique challenges today. But the vulnerability piece for us is really, really big. So we've got some activities that we do. One of those activities we share is in the middle of workouts, in the middle of the off-season workouts, we'll share what we call 3 H's. And we'll give every athlete the opportunity to stand up in front of the group and be able to talk about, who their hero is in their life, the person they look up to. We give every athlete the opportunity to talk about a hardship that they've overcome. And we give them all the opportunity to talk about what a highlight is, what was one of their big highlights. And it's amazing what you learn about people. But in the modeled behavior, we're going to share first. And the thing I always tell the coaches is, I'm like, you better be real when you go up there because they can see through it.
Yeah.
So don't go up there and give me something that I can read. Go in front of this team and give them something that the players are going to say, man, I had no idea coach was struggling with that. And what you learn is that everybody's got somebody that they look up for. It's usually the person in their life that's helped them the most.
Mhm.
All right. I've never met somebody that's gotten all this achievement and gotten all this success and gotten there on their own. The other thing that you learn is that every single one of these guys has overcome something. You know, the old adage that everybody's going through something. They're either going through it, coming out of it, or getting ready to go into it. We all have to overcome hard. We all have to overcome difficult situations in life. And then the third part, you start to learn that a lot of their highlight is what's happening in the midst of them telling the story. It's being here. It's being able to train. It's being able to push. It's being able to work with a group of guys that's of like-minded individuals that all come together for a common goal.
That's probably a lot of guys' first opportunity to public speak.
Yep.
And being a leader, it is public speaking. I'm leading my huddle or even my weight rack group. So I love that because it's almost this opportunity to really introduce what public speaking is to them and the value of your word as a leader. So actions and words start to come together with that. One question on that so other people can start to apply that. When they speak, is it I stand up and I do my 3 H's, or is it this week we're focusing on heroes? Next week we're focusing on hardships.
We've done it as the 3. So we do that because it's, you brought up public speaking. You'll learn this as a coach. If for all the young coaches out there watching, it's easier to public speak in front of a group of strangers
Yeah.
because you're never going to see them again. And you may not get the feedback of what they really thought. It's really, really difficult to stand up in front of a group that you're sharing adversity with, that you're going through tough times with, that you're working hard. Like, it's difficult to stand up in front of a group of people that you trust and to be able to speak. So because of that, we try to go with a positive, then the hardship, then a positive, because it's extremely difficult to get up in front of a group and really just talk about a hardship.
Yeah. Yeah, just straight out the gate. And that would be a heavy week.
Absolutely.
You only did hardship week. So I love that. Within heroes, do you often see that heroes, they know them, they're connected with them, or do they have these professional athlete heroes or actor? I don't know. Somebody outside of it. Do they have that personal relationship?
In the heroes, you start to get a grasp at how great mamas really are and what mamas have done. More times than not, the guys are talking about mom, or they're talking about grandmom, and they're talking about, without a praying mom or without a praying grandma, I wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to how they pay attention to a lot. And when you come from a home where mom has maybe done a lot of different things to make that house run and make it work, these guys pay attention to it, and because of that, they kind of come here and they don't want to let her down. So I would say the most common one is you start to learn how important mamas are.
Did an episode with a marriage and family therapist, and he introduced he takes like home dynamics, family dynamics, and applies it to athlete development. So amazing conversation. But he spoke about this triangle. So you have parents that then project on the kids, and then the coach is at the tip of the triangle. So then kids would then project on the parents, or the kids, of course, project on parents, but then kids then project on coach. So for a lot of male coaches that are leading female teams, that's when the relationship with father starts to come out.
Yep.
So then even with male athletes, with male coaches, you start to see a lot of the dynamics come into play.
Sure.
So college athletics, I mean, this is a lot of your guys' first time away from home. So now, how do you help establish and make them feel welcome and introduce vulnerability? Does it start with this 3 H's, or is there a process before that allows that?
Yeah, it starts from the time we're recruiting them. So obviously, I get to meet every one of them in the recruiting process, and then when we get them here, usually the first thing I do with all the new guys is I take them out to eat. I don't want the first time they see me is to be on the floor when I'm losing my mind, right?
Yeah.
So I usually take them out to eat, and then the important part goes back to that time investment. So you heard me say earlier that we got to meet them where they are. For me, I love to be on the water. So I live out in Annapolis, Maryland, live right by the water, right on the water there. I spend a lot of time on the water in the summer. Soon as I have the opportunity, players are going to be out with me. And then the next thing is usually whatever it is that they're into, you're going to try to meet them where they are. And it's like, oh man, this guy's really into golf. I would have never known that. I'm gonna go to the range with him. We've got a course right here behind campus. We've gone over to the range with a group of players, and it's been fun to see some of these guys that you'd least expect. Right? I love to fish, so if I can take them out fishing, I'm gonna take them fishing. It is wild to me when they start to find out what you're into and you learn what they're into. Like for me personally, it's wild how many guys are like, Coach, I want to go fishing. I'm like, I would have never thought. I took a group out 2 years ago, and it was probably 15 of us, and we went out fishing. And the one guy was like, just casually to the group, I never had a dad or an uncle around that would do something like this for me. So this is the first time I've ever held fishing rod. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have never known this, but he was so casual about what he said. And then you look up and you see his social media the next year and he's going fishing. Bought a rod. You're like, man, that's cool. So that's part of meeting these guys where they are. You allow them into your life to the things that are important to you, and they'll allow you into theirs. And then usually there's a time where a guy's going to reach out for help. And when he understands that there's no motive, I'm just here to help. There's no motive behind it. The motive is that we're family. We're a part of this thing together now. The relationship starts to take flight. So that's what that time investment is all about.
Have you always had this mentality as a coach? Where did this family approach start to originate?
Not always. I think I learned from Coach Sullivan, and then as you move on in your career, you really start to see how it can affect how you go about your job, right? And then so as I've progressed, like I've been at Maryland now, I just completed my 6th season here, but the longer you're doing this, the longer you realize that the players are your biggest asset and the relationships don't ever end. So they still go on to play professional ball. They still go on to own these companies and own these businesses. I mean, I let one of my former players do some financial investments for me. And people are like, man, he's only been doing it for a year. Yeah, but you don't understand. I trust the guy. You don't understand what me and the person have been through. So as he learns, who better than somebody that I know that's been with me for 3 or 4 years and has really been through the fire with me, who better to do it than him?
Yeah.
So I think the longer you're in it, you start to understand how valuable those relationships really are, and that it's really not just about the training.
And you're a father, 2 kids, correct?
Absolutely.
So did that start to really refuel your family style approach to coaching?
Well, I think maybe some of it. I think I was on track for that before I had kids, but I'll tell you the one thing, my son is always in the facility.
That's awesome.
I can't, I've said this before. I really hope I can keep him out of football at least until he gets to high school. And I'm sure people will criticize me for that, and it is what it is, but it's going to be really hard. He's 3 and he understands the game. The kid's been singing the Maryland fight song since he turned 2. He high fives all the guys when they're in. I've got another assistant that's got 4 kids. They're always in the building. Coach Locks has really created an environment where we can do that.
Yeah.
The most valuable piece that comes from that for me, that a player told me, he came to me and he said, it is really cool to see that you're the exact same way with your son as you are with us. My daughter's just not there. She's not old enough yet to kind of be around, but that meant something to me because he's like, Coach, we'll laugh. Like, discipline's important with him too.
Yeah.
And when we get to see it, it's like, man, he's no different with us than he is with his son. No. So I think that was powerful for me to learn that.
Yeah, and I imagine just teaching the same lessons, it's just different tone, different language, but they see that they're still learning, 18 years later. Oh, it's going to take us a while to get that lesson down, but now that reinforces the importance of this because you're teaching it to your son.
And it was they couldn't believe that. They're like, you already have like a mantra. I'm like, it's not a mantra, but toughness, accountability, and discipline are things that are really important in the household. And I'm trying to teach them off the rip. It's the same thing that we're trying to coach and trying to teach these players. So why would I not do it at his age?
Yeah.
Like I said, my daughter probably can't understand me a bunch yet, but
She's listening.
she's listening. She's watching for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, man. So speaking of mantras, does Maryland football change their mantra every year? How do you come up with that? And how connected to the weight room and the field is this?
So look, it's coach's program, and I'm in a very fortunate situation because the alignment between him and I, but it does not change. So when you talk about our core values as a program, toughness, effort, relentless. We have it
Yeah, I
right
was
on the
about to
wall
say.
over there. Pride, success, and then you talk about our standard of how we do things, and we always talk about start, stance, and finish of everything. So
I'll write that down.
it's those things don't change. So when we talk about toughness, we're talking about what's your breaking point. Effort's a non-negotiable. It's a decision that you have to make every single day. When we talk about being relentless, it's a relentless pursuit of excellence. All right. And then when it goes to pride, obviously it's for the name on the front, but it's also how you represent the name on the back. And then what he always says is success is a byproduct of those other habits and choices. And then when it comes to our standard, there's a definite start, stance, and finish to every single thing we do. So we talk about the stance, or the start to everything. We talk about the stance, which is really your position in there. It could be academically, it could be socially. And we talk about finish. Whatever you start, you're going to finish it. So in every single thing we do, that's part of our standard here, that those things don't change.
That's the value of an excellent set of values, pun intended here, because there's depth to it. So my fast thinking with stance is your posture, whether it's on the sideline
Exactly.
or in the rack, but it's also your stance academically. And then and I see this TV on the wall here, we got fourth quarter score. That can be connected to stance and finish. So
Absolutely.
there's layers to that, and guys are picking up on that. I love that. Speak to this about the fourth quarter score. So fourth quarter, this is in any high school football, we always see the fours go up. I don't know how it is on the college sidelines.
Yep.
So now speak to us about fourth quarter, that mentality, and we're entering into off season for the team here. So now how do I start talking about fall 2025 fourth quarter in the winter of 2024?
We have objectives offensively, defensively, and on special teams. But when it comes to ball, we also have objectives when it comes to our area, when it's strength and conditioning and performance. One of those objectives is winning the fourth quarter. That's important to us because it's a display of how we're able to finish. In the time that I've been here, we've had some years that we've been really good. We've had some years that we've been not so good, and this has been one of them. And that's the part of what happens on the field that I have to be able to own in this room, because a lot of how you finish things, it's a mentality. A lot of how you finish is not about performance, it's about a mentality, because at the end of a game, at the end of a season, everybody's tired. You want to learn about a person, see them when they're tired. Everybody starts camp, August 1st every year, and they got the same goals, the same objectives. But the process of how you get there is what's going to separate teams. For us, we have to own what we do in the fourth quarter on the field because of our belief about how that is. It's part of our standard. It's part of how we finish. That's developed in this room.
Can you share your personal evaluation during season? Because we put all this work in the off season. Now, what are you looking for in season that then either affirms or think, okay, I got to make this adjustment here in our summer training to lead up to success in season?
Yeah, we ultimately we want to see how the work we do translates to the field. That's the most important thing. Athletes aren't coming here to lift weights. They're not coming here to run sprints and run a 40. They're coming here to play football. And so we have to make sure that everything that we do complements the best product that we can put on the field on Saturday. So you're evaluating every part of the game when it comes to all 9 position groups. You're looking at how they're performing. You're looking at how they start, looking at how they finish. You're looking at how they hold up throughout the course of the season, and ultimately you're looking at, are they performing at their best? And those are the things that we have to look at in the program to say, what changes and adaptations do we have to make sure that we're putting the best product forward on Saturdays? So it's a constant evaluation process.
Yeah. And I mean, this level of Big Ten football,
It's not a lot of room for error.
no, everybody's good.
That's right.
Everybody competes. Yeah, it seems to be a national champion contender from this conference every year. In the off season, it's opportunity to develop relationships. You also have recruiting in that off season when high schoolers are coming in here. How much does NIL, a part of the recruiting process, a part of the training process, and keeping guys connected to the vision, the focus, and the mission that Maryland football has overall?
Well, I think in any aspect of the media right now, you can look and see the importance of NIL when it comes to recruiting. I'll speak on that from my personal stance kind of in view on it. So again, it goes back to I talked about the alignment that I have with our head football coach. I think NIL is a great thing for the athlete. I think it affords the athletes opportunities that they have not had in the past, and I think all that's good. I do agree that the nature of it is almost encouraging self-indulgent behavior. So it makes the job harder in terms of being able to build and develop the right culture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, I refer to Coach Saban, but he says NIL is good, but if you don't get the right people in the right seats on the bus, then it doesn't really matter, because ultimately that's not going to help you on Saturdays. The best part about my position here at Maryland, I'm involved with every aspect of recruiting except that. And so I tell Coach, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what, because I want to coach the guy, excuse me, with the objective of getting the best version of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care for what is worked out to understand or to know, you know, what a guy's getting, because I don't want that to cloud the judgment of anybody who is in the room coaching the guy, whether it's on my staff or whether it's me. So I have a really good situation with the head coach in that aspect. And so we also have a good situation because I think he wants players that are aligned with his values.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really hasn't been a negative thing for us in the sense. So we've been fortunate with that. But I think they do a really good job at getting the right guys in the right seat on the bus.
That's great. See, even with that, sometimes natural tendencies come up, envy, and I imagine the newspaper or Twitter is just talking about specific numbers that are made public. So then how do you start to teach these lessons that are going to benefit the guys long term, where they're learning how to manage their own resentment, envy, or any negative actions, behaviors, feelings that they may have?
Sure. And it's not just that. You also, the lessons that you have to teach these guys become even more critical, right? Because now they need to understand finances. They need to understand investments. They need to understand taxes. They need to understand all sorts of important things that probably somebody else in their life was responsible for until they got here.
Right.
And so it doesn't change the fact that you're still trying to develop the character. It just makes it that much more important.
Yeah.
And so even when you're a really good player, the newspapers are going to write about you and the media is going to talk about you. And you know what those things are? It's still rat poison. It's still poison, and it's still the fastest way to complacency.
Yeah.
So we still got to fight against it. It just becomes that much more important.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of those things, some of those feelings, and some of those ways were still present before NIL.
Yeah.
It just makes it more important now because, what's at stake?
Before it was, playing time or any social stuff outside of it where they're still feeling that. But now it's just a bigger bank account. Speak to us about Maryland football's captain selection. This always fascinates me. Every team does it different. How do y'all choose your captains? Is it by game? Is it by season? What's your approach?
We do both. So coach does game captains, which are like weekly captains, and then the end of the year they get the vote on permanent captains that kind of go down in the books here. So that's been his philosophy. That's not to say that it's going to stay that way, but I kind of love that because it gives him and us an opportunity to kind of develop and pour into different guys,
Mm-hmm.
throughout the year. And Obviously, some of that's based on performance, some of it's based on how they practice, some of that's based on what kind of teammate they are, and how they've been showing some of those choices, habits, and behaviors throughout the course of the season and the week. So,
Yeah. I like that selection at the end. So juniors are pick or junior sophomores, potentially freshmen, choose for going
they
into
get the
off
vote
season.
on it. Yep, they get the vote on that.
So now they get the whole off season to learn how to be a leader.
Yeah, so he's got a group. Coach has a group that's a leadership group, and that's also kind of voted on. And that group is a specific group that he gets to kind of pour into and invest a little bit more in terms of, how the guy's going to lead, how they're going to influence other people around him. And it's cool because he puts them in a position where sometimes the players have to be the voice, or they have to be the ones that are getting his message across to the group. So he gets to evaluate, how are they able to do this when it's time, when it's the off season or when it's the summer. So we're doing it in training before we get out on the field on Saturdays in the fall.
Man, I love that. Have you had the opportunity to sit in on any of those sessions that he spends with those leaders?
Many of them.
So what is that experience like?
Well, remember, we talked about this before, but there's a presence anytime you're in the room with the head football coach. So just the first part of overcoming that, it's a big developmental kind of leap. But you really, there's an intimate connection with the guys who were in that room with him. So you really get to learn what makes those guys tick and kind of how they respond to things and what's important to them. So I get to spend a ton of time with them. It's the best part about being a strength coach is the time that we spend with the team. But I definitely don't take for granted when I get to see him in those intimate settings with the players and kind of how they respond to things. So it's been a learning experience for me, and it's one of my favorite parts to what we get to do when it comes to cultivating leadership here.
That's cool. You're still learning and developing as a head strength coach. Usually at the top, you got to look for opportunities to continue to learn and lead. So now you're sitting on that. What else are you doing to continue to develop? You got family at home. We got so much opportunity here with Maryland football. We also got fishing. We got water.
Oh, yeah.
How else are you developing outside of the weight room?
Well, you hit on a point where when you become a head strength coach, it becomes a little bit more difficult to find those opportunities. For me, I'm all for going to conferences. I'm just past the point in my career of calling that development. What I always tell the staff is, what are the things that you can do to bring back to make the program better? And so for them, they get to go out, they get to see other places, they get to see how other people do it. A head guy, it becomes difficult because it's almost a threat sometimes if you go in the room somewhere else. So we've had to be creative, and I'm grateful for the staff that I have and some of the things we've been able to come up with. The last 2 years, we've done a staff retreat down to Exos, down in Florida. And, I told Brent Calloway there, shout out to those guys, but I told Brent Calloway, I said, since I've been a head guy, I don't know that I've learned as much in such a short period of time, because it was a 48-hour deal that was totally catered for our staff. Mm-hmm. And so we got to be in the classroom, we got to be on the field, we got to run through things, right? So the last 2 years, it was great to be able to do that. I probably haven't had that much growth since I was a GA. We're getting ready to go down to a kind of a conference where we're going to learn about bone density. We're going to learn about bone circumference, body makeup, body structure, to be able to kind of tell, optimal weight, optimal body mass size for different positions within a football team. Something totally new for me, but it's an opportunity where we get to go and we get to spend the time together as a staff and we get to learn together. And then throughout the year, I give the staff an opportunity to go do something different. Mm-hmm. So they may have one thing that they can go do different, whether it's, I got a guy that's going to do a bodybuilding class, right? Well, it's part of what we do in the weight room.
Yeah.
And I have another guy that's going to do some work with Westside. And what they do, they go out, they get to learn, they come back, and they get an opportunity to teach and present the staff. And the assistant gets a chance to say, hey, coach, this is how I think if we implement this, this will make us better here within our current system. Mm-hmm. So, we've had to be creative, but it's been fun to kind of do what we've done here the last few years in terms of growth and professional development.
And you're speaking at NSCA Coaches Conference in New Orleans, right?
I will. So January 8th through the 10th.
Sounds right.
I think we'll be down in NOLA. I'll be giving away some cool 1% T-shirts down there for people who are going to get involved and volunteer and help answer. But yeah, we'll have a good time, and I always try to take an opportunity to, as I say, to let people learn from my mistakes. So I definitely don't have all the answers, but I know some of the mistakes that I've made, and I know some of the things that I've learned from, and I know some of the growth that I've had after, I believe this was my 13th season being a head guy or sitting in the head chair for performance. So I've been fortunate. So if I can share and help somebody else, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll most likely be there. I'll aim. I'll definitely sit in. Is this a practical or
Both?
say question? Dude, teaching practicals are the most challenging thing for conferences because people, they don't want to go out there and make a movement mistake and look bad.
Correct.
That is what we need. We need people to see the holes in their game because then their athletes have those same holes.
Here's what I don't want, and I never want to be this. I don't want to go stand up anywhere and give the highlight reel of all the things we've done right. People aren't really growing from that. What I'd rather do is let's go talk about how we've been able to, this was a challenge. It was a challenge for us to be able to implement acceleration work twice a week in our program year round. Well, how did you do it? This is what we did. And now I can get people up and I can get them involved and I can let them ask questions about it. And if I don't know the answer, I promise you, I will find the answer for you and get it to you. Mm-hmm. But I think what people would rather know is, how can I get my program better? How can I learn from some of the things that you struggled with? Or if you struggled with it there, of course I'm going to be struggling with it where I'm at. Those are the things that I'd rather do. And so we do half practical and half, kind of the sit down. But that's why we give out the T-shirts, because the one thing I've learned about fitness professionals, you guys will do a lot for a T-shirt.
You're not wrong. So in line with that, and then the final set of questions here, that is immediately connected to the weight room. So a coach afraid to go out there during a practical and make a mistake, I feel that they'll apply that into the weight room. They don't want their athletes to make mistakes.
Sure.
They want to just build them up, but that's going to catch up with them in season no matter the sport. So I've heard you speak on how you use velocity-based training now to bring egos down and check them. So what are some tools and opportunities to bring now egos up, right? The science of low self-esteem. This is going to be very beneficial for high school coaches. That's just, they want it bad for their kids to see their potential, but there's so much going on. So what tools within the weight room can you apply feedback to help bring self-esteem up, that they're better than they believe?
It's not just high school. Remember this whole self-indulgent thing, in every aspect now, I think middle school, high school, college, professional, I think one of the most important things is being able to show consistent feedback. We're a little bit of the microwave generation, right? This is not like, I talked to you about my high school strength coach earlier, Tony Bombachi. Tony Bombachi would always say, put your head down, go to work. The results will come later, just work. Now, you have to show people as you're training them the progress that they're able to make. That is one of the best ways I think that we use technology in the program. So our sports scientist, Dustin Planky, does an amazing job with this, but we have the perch on the rack. We use the VALD sensors to go out. We run an acceleration 1 to 2 times a week. We run a max velocity 1 to 2 times a week. And so you're able to consistently show, here's where you are. Where are you trending? Mm-hmm. If I look at the force plate and I look at the data from the perch and I look at the data from the 20s and the 40s that we're running on the field, where are you trending? You have that. You have the DEXA that you do, so you understand body composition, you understand weight. I think that the feedback that we can show these guys regularly is what helps build some of that confidence. It also helps us really target where we need to improve. I tell our athletes all the time, you know the difference between a trainer and a strength coach? If you're paying the trainer, they're going to do a lot of things that you like.
Yeah.
You're not paying me. So that means that I can attack the things that you're not good at. I can attack the areas that you need to improve, and I can make you consistently do the things that you're uncomfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to show that feedback consistently, to show which way the athlete is trending, I think is the best benefiting factor in terms of the athlete and the coach being able to build confidence that, look, we have to do this. We have to continue doing this. And here's why.
Yeah. Do you ever step in and ask the teammates, the leaders on the team, to then, if you see somebody down or trending down, do you put some onus on the leadership to then step in and help that athlete level up?
It becomes leadership. It becomes a position group. I think those are things that you can manipulate as a strength coach where how are you pairing guys in the lift? Who's training with who? Are you doing it positionally? Are you doing it, sometimes we have older guys that may take a young, gifted athlete. You get a guy that comes in, he's young, he's strong. He thinks he's a little stronger than he is. He thinks he's a little better than he is. Well, there's an easy way that we can kind of humble you because we can manipulate who you're training with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long to see that, you know what? You're stronger than the average person that comes in your age, but you still haven't built that bandwidth or that toolbox yet like you think you have. And now we're going to put you with this guy because not only is it going to humble you, but it's going to give you a roadmap to where we need you to get.
Book I'm going to recommend, it's called Boys Amongst Men. It's about the 10 years that the NBA, they allowed high schoolers to enter the draft. And we know the amazing stories, Kobe, KG, success, but the book dives into the non-successful stories. So it speaks to, like, Toronto Raptors had a team mom in place for T-Mac to teach him how to be an adult. And a lot of the other teams, they didn't have that structure in place. So with T-Wolves, Kevin McHale, center for Celtics, was the GM. He was eventually coach of the Rockets, but then he taught KG how to be a pro. So all these teams, they didn't have leadership in place, and so teams gambled on, okay, we'll just gamble and draft second-round pick on this high school kid. But then they cut the 15th person on the end of the bench to make room for the high school kid. Well, that 15th man, he was the vet who had no gas left in his knees, but he would teach the whole team how to be a pro.
The value of the locker room.
Oh, yeah. So the theory of the book is that 10 years set the league back 10 years because you cut all the vets out and the veterans.
Interesting.
Yeah, amazing read or listen.
I need to check that out.
Yeah, I'll link it up for you. So now, just closing out the value of the locker room. So this does come with time. 13 years in the head seat, and you're able to read a room. So how do you now teach your staff to read the room on leadership energies and when things are not going your way? Like if the record's not going your way, people start to trend downwards. How do you aim to read that room and then elevate that energy appropriately?
I always tell the staff that after every bit of adversity, after losses, we didn't have the season that we wanted to have this year. And I'll tell them after the games, I'll say, pray for the purpose in it. There's purpose in the process of everything. And so I always am like, let me pray for the purpose so I can not miss that. And if you get that, you find the best way where you can start to articulate that to the guys that are in the room. The second thing is you're going to lean on your core values. You're going to lean on those heavy because it becomes about putting the best version forward, right? This is, we learned this, I say we, Coach Locks and I weren't together at Alabama. We had a 5-year gap between his time there and my time there, but you learn a lot of the same values. And it's why the one thing that you learn is make it about process. Don't make it about the result. Don't make it about the end of the road. Make it about process. Process is things that you can control. Process is what are the things that you have to do to continually make yourself better or to be the competitor that you want to make yourself. And you start to lean on those things heavy in times of adversity. And in the off season or in the summer, you're trying to create that adversity. So for me, we don't have the season that we want to have. Well, guess what? I'm going to lean on a lot of the adversities that we face this season. I'm going to lean on a lot of that when we're starting to prepare these guys in the offseason and in the spring and in the summer. So we don't forget those experiences. We got to use those experiences to be able to grow from it. And we got to use those experiences to dictate where we need to fill holes and where we need to get better.
And that in itself is an important lesson for them when the football is over, is learn from your mistakes in life, career, so that way you can progress and continue to develop as a young man.
Absolutely.
Cool. Dude, this is awesome. I feel the energy in this room. It's a beautiful place, man. And yeah, dude, I'm grateful for you, man. I look forward to January hearing you speak and continuing to do amazing things here with Maryland football and all the athletes you work with.
Well, we can't thank you enough for coming to Terpsville and being able to spend the day with us. All right. If you're going out to NOLA, come check us out when we're down there. So I appreciate
First
you
round's
coming
on
through.
Ryan. Yeah.
First round, I got it.
All right. Cool, man. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Boom.